Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada. These words were spoken in the 1984 classic film, The Last Starfighter, directed by Nick Castle. Hey everyone, welcome to Man Cave Insider episode 34. I'm Dennis. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel down below so you can see past and future videos. We're in my man cave, and this room is surrounded by things that I've collected my entire life, and these are the stories behind them. And today we're going to take a look at The Last Starfighter and do an unboxing for the new Blu-ray release from Arrow Video. Now, The Last Starfighter was written by Jonathan Bettel, and at the time he was working part-time as a cab driver. He was reading a book about King Arthur called The Once and Future King, written by T.H. White. And one day while getting a slice of pizza, he noticed a bunch of kids gathered around an arcade game. This was the early 80s, and arcade games were popping up everywhere. Convenience stores, malls, movie theaters, gas station, hotels. And it was a very big deal at the time. And he envisioned the video game as a modern-day Sword in the Stone. The plot of The Last Starfighter centered around a teenage boy named Alex Rogan who lived in a trailer park but had dreams of getting out and making a life for himself along with his girlfriend Maggie. At the trailer park is an arcade game called Starfighter that he is very good at. He eventually defeats the game, and it sends off a signal into outer space when he is met by Centauri that tells him that the video game was a way of recruiting and finding new starfighters. Although reluctant at first, Alex eventually embraces his destiny and winds up defeating the Armada. He goes back to Earth to get his girlfriend Maggie, and they go off together for their new life on another planet. This movie shows that destiny comes in all shapes and sizes, and you need to grab it when it comes. Now, the history of The Last Starfighter actually has roots with the John Carpenter classic Halloween. Let me explain. John Carpenter and Nick Castle were classmates together at USC. When John Carpenter was making the first Halloween film, Nick Castle played Michael Myers for only $25 a day. Castle and Carpenter also wrote the classic film Escape from New York. And when John Carpenter was making Halloween 2, he cast Lance Guest in his first film. Carpenter recommended Guest to Nick Castle, who was gearing up to shoot The Last Starfighter. The female lead was played brilliantly by Catherine Mary Stewart, who was working on Days of Our Lives. Guest and Stewart did their screen test together, and it was based on the chemistry of that screen test that they were cast into the roles. Originally, the characters were named Skip and Molly, but they felt it was a little too cartoonish, and their names were changed to Alex and Maggie. Rounding out the cast were Dan O'Hurley as Grigg and Robert Preston as Centauri. Now, the role of Centauri was written with Robert Preston in mind, and it was an homage to one of his best-known films, The Music Man. Centauri was viewed as the Music Man in outer space. Preston gave a wonderful performance that gave a lot of life to the film, and it also turned out to be Robert Preston's last movie. The filmmakers went to great lengths to try not to copy things that have already been done by Spielberg and Lucas. The original script was set in a suburban neighborhood, but they decided to move it into a trailer park. By having the characters in a trailer park, it gave a much more centralized community to the film that wouldn't have been seen had it been set in a suburban neighborhood. The film was shot over 40 days, and is also recognized as one of the first films to use computer-generated imagery, CGI, throughout the film. Up until this point, CGI was in its infancy, and the only film that had really used it to some extent was Disney's film Tron. At the time, CGI was a very complicated process. For example, the Gunstar consisted of over 750,000 polygons, and it took coders 3 months to render it in the computer. The film incorporated over 300 CGI shots, and many of these shots took days to render. The Last Starfighter was released in July of 1984. It had a budget of $14 million and wound up making over double of that. However, it kind of got lost in the shuffle of some of the bigger tentpole films of 1984, such as Ghostbusters, Gremlins, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. However, the film has gained a bit of a following over the years. In conjunction with the film, Marvel Comics released a 3-issue limited series adaptation of the screenplay. It was advertised that there was going to be an actual Starfighter video game as seen in the film. However, that never came to be. Atari was developing a Last Starfighter game for the 2600 and 5200 systems. However, the game never got past the prototype phase. There was a Last Starfighter game released for the original Nintendo Entertainment System in 1990. In 2004, there was even a Last Starfighter musical that appeared on Off-Broadway in New York, and there was a cast recording made of the musical that is available on Amazon. With the popularity of the film gaining over the years, there has been talk of a sequel, and there's been some exciting developments lately. Screenwriter Jonathan Bettel has recently reacquired the rights for The Last Starfighter and has been developing a sequel along with writer Gary Whitta, who co-wrote Star Wars Rogue One. The sequel for The Last Starfighter is not going to be a reboot, rather a continuation of the first story. The film will bring back Lance Guest and Catherine Mary Stewart as Alex and Maggie. This time they are parents and will no doubt deal with a new generation of starfighters. With the recent success of Cobra Kai continuing the Karate Kid legacy and the upcoming Ghostbusters Afterlife continuing the original Ghostbusters legacy, it's very promising that the Last Starfighter sequel will move forward at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. Now what I want to do is I want to show a few things from my Last Starfighter collection. Now right here I have a poster of the original film that I got a few years back. And when I went to my first convention, I was able to meet director Nick Castle along with stars Lance Guest and Catherine Mary Stewart. I was thrilled to meet them. They couldn't have been nicer, and I have this poster signed by all three of them. And recently I got the Last Starfighter that was just released on remastered Blu-ray from Arrow Video. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of these things. Okay, so this is the new release of The Last Starfighter that just came out from Arrow Video. Now this hasn't been the first release of The Last Starfighter. It was released originally on VHS and DVD, and what I have here is the 25th anniversary Blu-ray that came out in 2009. They remastered the film, it looked great, and had a lot of great bonus features, many of which have carried over onto the new release. Also, I mentioned that Marvel Comics had put out a Last Starfighter 3 series limited run as an adaptation of the movie, and I got all 3 issues when it originally came out in 1984. And when I met Lance Guest and Catherine Mary Stewart at the convention a few years back, I got them to sign the first issue. So I was very happy to meet them. They were super nice, and you know, this is a really great adaptation of the film. And the Arrow Video completely remastered the film in 4K and has a lot of new bonus features on here. An interview with Catherine Mary Stewart, interview with several members of the crew, to give you a much broader insight into the process of writing the film, the computer special effects, and writer Jonathan Bettel even gives kind of a preview of what the sequel of the film is going to be. And there's also new artwork created specifically for this release. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual Blu-ray. And what's really neat about this is it's got a reversible cover, which means it's got the artwork created for the new release, and you could take the slipcase out, and then it's got artwork from the original film. So you can really decide how you want to have it displayed. I prefer to go with the artwork from the original film. And inside, it's got the disc on Blu-ray. It's got a poster, a 2-sided poster with the new artwork. And then on the other side it's got the original artwork from 1984. And also with this, it comes with a booklet with a couple of articles written about the film. It's about 40 pages. Talks about the restoration. It talks about cast and crew. And it's got a lot of great pictures from this. Arrow Video does an outstanding job of putting out releases of a lot of classic films. Also on my channel, I reviewed a couple of other of their releases of Flash Gordon and Weird Science, and you could check those out as well. But as fans of these films and fans of, movies growing up, it's a great compilation. Another really cool thing about The Last Starfighter is if you've ever seen the movie Back to the Future Part 2, when Marty goes to Hill Valley in 2015, you could even see Centauri's star car in a couple of the shots. So it's a great set. I'm so excited to have this. It looks and it sounds better than it ever has. And if you're a fan of this film, you definitely should check it out. So that is it for our look at The Last Starfighter, directed by Nick Castle. I'm very optimistic that we're going to hear some great things about the upcoming sequel in the near future. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to seeing you next time.